The Last Word on Today FM with Matt Cooper.
So there was a story in the Times Ireland edition today suggesting that over 2,000 bins have been removed from Dublin City Council over the last decade or so. Councillor Kevin Donoghue, Labour Party councillor for Dublin South East Inner City. Why?
There's a couple of different possible explanations for it, and I think it would be helpful if we were to have that clarified, because I suppose it might be the case, or it could be the case in a number of instances, that those smaller steel bins have been removed and replaced with larger, kind of the big belly bins that they're referred to quite often. So it's not 100% clear exactly what the explanation for it is, but I think what we can probably safely say at this stage is that at peak demand, especially in the last number of months, there isn't enough bins there to service what's needed, and it's causing quite a lot of frustration for people in the city at the moment.
It is. Here's just one text message just popped in front of me. The topic of DCC removing bins is the bane of my life. I live in the main Phibsborough Road near Doyle's Corner. A few years ago, complained to DCC about people dumping their household rubbish in the bins. What was their solution? To remove every bin between here and Smithfield. It's an absolute disgrace. People want to use bins that are properly serviced, including young people. The result is we're consistently voted the biggest litter black spot in the country. That's from Fran.
Yeah, and I think it certainly was an approach a number of years ago to essentially remove the bin and remove the problem of illegal dumping. I think that probably has seemed to not be as successful as people would have hoped. So there has been certainly a push against it, and I think a move away from it in recent times, and a push towards the provision of more bins and more sanitary services.
A push for them, but they're not there, because the figures show by the end of April, 3,217 bins in Dublin City Council area, as against over 5,000 bins a decade ago.
No, absolutely, and it is a problem. I've been clear, and in fairness, that the party has been clear on the need to provide more services for the city, and I think we have to have a larger conversation about waste management in the city, full stop. I've asked for more bins in my submission as consultation on the development plan, and I've made a number of calls for the delivery of them in my area, the likes of Portobello and Grand Canal, and that in the last number of weeks, specifically in terms of the amount of people who are using the amount of litter, that has built up in the last number of months. And I've also called for increased cleansing in certain areas as well. I do think that there is a relevant point to be made in that I think the staff are doing as much as they can. I think there's a resource issue here, and we need to talk about the fact that the staff complement is much lower than it was in 2008 as well.
So that means there aren't the people to go around and empty the bins and put fresh bags in for the next amount of rubbish that comes along.
Yeah, so I think we need to talk about the level of resourcing given to local government. I mean, and to take a step back and look at it from a wider point of view, and the EU average government spend through local authorities is 24% of kind of government allocation. In Ireland, it's 8%. We have a budget that's €1 billion, that should be €3 billion, and that's an adult conversation that we need to have about how governments have treated local authorities and invested in local authorities.
Would you be confident that that money would be spent correctly? Because we've had so many examples in this country, it's all about throwing extra money at something. And when the extra money gets thrown at it, the service doesn't necessarily improve.
Yeah, look, and that's a fair point as well. I think where public money is being spent, a bit of we need to be careful of that. But having said that, the best service is provided by public services. And we have to properly invest in that. We have to acknowledge that that's the case across Europe, and it would be the case here if we were willing to trust in local authorities to carry out this work. What we're asking them to do, or what national government is asking them to do, very frequently, is to do the job of 3 or 4 people with 2 or 3 in the complement, and to kind of tie one hand behind their back and ask them to fight a fair fight. So, it is problematic that way. We aren't being, and there's another difficulty here where every year, and it's been talked about a lot, the reform of the local property tax, but every year for the last number of years, councillors who give out day in, day out about the level of service being provided to local authorities will cut every year the property tax, which cost Dublin City Council tens of millions of euro over the last number of years. That's a conversation that a lot of councillors aren't willing to have. And when it comes down to it, there's an opportunity for us to either to collect more property tax and invest properly in local services. And every year, political parties have made the decision to not do that. And that's extremely, extremely frustrating as a councillor who I'm relatively new to the council. But it's extremely frustrating for me in the last number of years to have to deal with that.
Councillor Kevin Donoghue of the Labour Party, thank you for joining us.